What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I get to finally make the video that I've been talking about for probably a month or more now. Either way, it's been a long time, and I've been told countless number of times that it's not possible. You cannot build a Corpulent Cadaver team for hard mode that doesn't use Krisk. It can't be done. I was told that many times, and I said, yes, it can be done. It is possible, and I will do it, but I just need one specific champion. That champion was Duedan the Runic. This champion I pulled last week or the week before. Either way, I pulled this dude, and he solidified my fate in releasing this video finally. There he is, Duedan the Runic. This guy unlocked hard mode Hydra with a Corpulent Cadaver team for me. Now, there's some other options possibly that you could use, but I want to go into why he is so crucial. I want to get into how you can actually build a Corpulent Cadaver team. Now, I do want to preface this by saying, if you value your sanity, this is probably not the team for you, because this is an hour, potentially 5 hours of manual nonsense, constant resetting. It's not a fun team to run. However, if you're like most raid players, or at least a pretty big portion of them, that values their clan progression in Hydra Clash more than their own sanity, you know, you're more of a team player, you value the team more than yourself, then go ahead and build this team. This team is going to give you some pretty good damage. It may be nerfed. I don't know. I'll talk about my opinions a little bit later on in the video. But today I want to talk about this team that I've spent an unreasonable amount of time actually building. Now, it did 971 million points. Unfortunately, I can't see how much Hydra Clash damage that actually was, but I believe on hard mode, you get a 2 multiplier, right? So 2x multiplier. So if it's basically 2 billion damage, right? Basically 2 billion points. It's like 1.8, 1.9 billion points. That is a lot of points for most clans. That would just put you at first place. That's really all there is to that. So what do we got going on here? What champions are part of this mess? Well, we have Corpulent Cadaver. Can't be replaced. The team is literally named after him. Corpulent Cadaver team. Simple as that. Can't be replaced. Duedan, which is not Krisk, because Krisk can be replaced, as we see in today's video. Anchorite, amazing champion, but some specific stuff that he can be replaced. Lydia, she can be replaced, though she brings a ton of stuff. It would make her be replaced, as well as some other champions. Sandlashed Survivor, who's actually very solid, was a huge help in this team. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. And then Underpriest Brogni, which at the time of doing this video cannot be replaced. So what I want to share with you guys today is basically all the kind of bullet points that I've gone through to making a team like this work. Now, this may not apply to like the double Yumiko teams, because I've never run those. Those are more difficult, I believe, as far as the speeds, different approach to those. So the approach that I'm going to be is, if you're running champions like Duedan, Anchorite, Krisk, Lanicus even, the different criteria that you're going to want to be looking out for to actually make one of these teams work. Now, it's still going to be a long run. Definitely will be. But either way, let's go into the kind of like bullet point checklist that I have over here, so you can see, hey, do your champions have this? And if not, get this on your team. It's going to make the team actually work. So first up, we have hex or multi sets of hex. Okay, what I mean by hex sets are cursed. So cursed gear, you want to make sure at minimum, at the very least, you have one champion who can continually place hex AoE. In my case, I have two champions. I have Lydia placing it AoE. Of course, her A2 ability, it's a pretty low cooldown. She's pretty fast, so she gets back to it very often. So she has Hex on her. Cursed is what we're going to call it. Cursed and Hex, I'm going to use those interchangeably, but she has a Cursed set on her. I also have Anchorite in a Cursed set. So I have two champions that are able to place Hex pretty consistently. What Hex does, and why it's important, is it allows you to actually target the Head of Mischief, which is the #1 most annoying head with this team, because it can single-handedly ruin your entire run. Next, past having some cursed on your team, whatever it's from, you want a Mischief tank. And I make a note here that if you have no Mischief tank designated, then the Mischief tank is going to be Cadaver. And what I mean by that is, you'll see in this fight that whenever the Head of Mischief attacks, it's going to attack the champion with the most amount of buffs. Ideally, in this situation, it's going to be Duedan the Runic. Since he places counterattack on himself, as well as a taunt, Head of Mischief is going to attack Duedan. Hopefully we see it here. As long as he doesn't die, he is a very high priority target, so he just dies. Unfortunately, let's rewind this just a little bit. No turn there. He just took a turn. Let's rewind it just a tad. And okay, can't actually rewind it. Here we go. We'll let it play through here. But you can see here that Duedan has quite a bit of buffs. Hopefully he has the most. And I build him with high resistance. So for a Mischief tank, what you want is high resistance. Make sure they have plenty of buffs. Don't make them super fast, because you don't want them to outrun their buffs. But it looks like probably Mischief is probably going to attack Corpulent Cadaver. That's a big issue. because if Mischief steals the buffs from Corpulent Cadaver, well, your run's over because you steal two things. You steal the shield artifact set, which can't be replaced ever, but then you also steal everything else. You do leave one of the shields up from Brogni, and it can be regrown, but it's still a headache. So you see there, he attacked Corpulent Cadaver. Unfortunately, that is not the plan. But later in the fight, Head of Mischief is very consistently attacking Duedan the Runic, but not all the time. But you do want to have a champion who is designated to be your Mischief tank so that majority of the attacks of Head of Mischief are going to that champion. But eventually, since Corpulent Cadaver is going to be the slowest on your team, the attacks are going to be going onto him. So you got to make sure he's built with plenty of resistance. Actually, let's go ahead and talk about his build. So his build is very high resistance. I'm shooting for 450 plus, if at all possible. Actually, it's required. Don't risk it. One time, I tried to run Corpulent Cadaver as the Mischief tank. Terrible idea. If you're looking for a time where you maybe want a new computer, maybe a new screen, you feel like punching your screen, well, do that. Run Corpulent Cadaver as your Mischief tank, and you're going to just want to throw your computer or your phone out the window because Head of Mischief is 100% going to get the 3% chance to actually steal all your buffs, and it's not going to happen in the first 20 tries. It's going to happen on the 50th when you're actually making good progression, and it's going to ruin everything. Trust me, it's happened to me, so don't do that. Don't make Corpulent Cadaver your main Mischief tank, but build him so that if the Head of Mischief does attack him, that he's not just going to strip his buffs easily. 475 resistance is what I have. I have him pretty fast. I have him at 232 speed. It's worked out fine here, but if it's not working out for you in your run, lower his speed. Definitely consider lowering his speed. The crit rate doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. All I want for him is to be the correct speed. It may be slower. It may be the speed I'm at. It may be faster, but correct speed. Very good resistance, and then as much counterattack stuff as humanly possible. So you want retaliation. 2-piece set, so get it wherever you can. Prioritize resistance over the counterattack, but get counterattack stuff wherever possible. And then revenge accessories. Revenge accessories purchased from the clan shop. Fill those out wherever possible as well. If I could get a resistance one here, I definitely would. But like I said, get it wherever you possibly can, because the more counterattacks you get, the more attacks a Corpulent Cadaver is going to have that don't actually count as a turn for the boss. So this is definitely a very, very important strategy. As far as his masteries, this is what I have set up. That may actually be the next tip as well that I was going to make sure I gave. Okay, it's not. It's the tip after this next tip. The next tip was actually going to be shield set. So outside of having Corpulent Cadaver's build very specific, this does contribute to how Corpulent Cadaver is actually going to react and how well he's actually going to scale. You have to have a shield set on somebody. For me, this shield set is on Sandlashed Survivor. Ideally, it's going to be on somebody who doesn't really require a ton of different build requirements, like not a ton of speed, not a ton of accuracy and resistance, preferably a little bit lower stat requirements. So for Sandlashed, I was looking for, well, very fast. I was looking for good accuracy to actually place the provoke on her A1 ability, but it's not crazy accuracy requirements. So I was able to get a shield set on her, but the importance of shield set is you'll notice in this run that very early, when you can actually see stuff a little bit better, that Corpulent Cadaver has two different shield buffs on him. Actually, everyone on the team does right now. You have a checkered shield right here at the beginning, and then you have a split shield. So the checkered shield is the shield set. If that falls off, it's never coming back. The split shield is Brogni's shield buff. So that can be reapplied. You don't want it to ever fall off, but it can be reapplied. The shield set buff cannot ever be reapplied, and when Brogni grows the shield, it is growing both of those shields individually. So if you were running and Brogni's doing, say, 1,000,000 damage, and he's growing those shields by percentage of that, say, 30% or something, so he's growing those shields a massive amount. If you're growing 2 shields, each for that amount, it's going to literally, well, be double versus if you just had 1 shield. So you want to make sure you have a shield set plus the actual shield buff. And by shield set, I don't mean bolster. Bolster does not equal shield set because bolster cannot be extended. So don't use bolster, use specifically a shield set. So shield set, we have curse gear, somebody applying hex, and we have Corpulent Cadaver in retaliation and counterattack stuff in general. Next up, next crucial detail that you do not want to miss is Brogni being built for damage. So this is something I see often happen, that Brogni is not built to absolutely smack. Like, he should be rivaling your arena nukers because he is going to be what allows Corpulent Cadaver to scale pretty quick. The quicker you can get Corpulent Cadaver scaling, the faster you're going to be one-shotting the heads, the faster you're going to be able to take stuff down, and the faster your run's going to be consistent. If you're taking hundreds of turns, if you're not one-shotting the heads by like turn, typically I'm doing like 1,000,000 damage, I think like turn 80, and usually like a turn 100, actually we can see it here, what I was doing. So you can see turn 2, let's fast forward to turn 89. How much damage is Corpulent Cadaver doing on turn 92? Well, we'll find that out in just a moment, but you want to be doing a lot of damage. So you can see the Head of Suffering here, tons of HP. Let's see what Cadaver hits for. Turn 94. This will give you a decent idea of, hey, maybe I should be about here for my damage once he actually hits. A few seconds, boom. There he goes. He hits for 783,000 damage. About around turn 100, I like to be hitting for about 1 million damage. He's not quite there yet, but he's very, very close. So we'll go ahead and let Corpulent Cadaver hit one more. This is at turn 104. We've had quite a few more turns for Brogni to actually use his A2. So Corpulent Cadaver goes in, smacks that head for 835,000 damage. So around turn 100, it's going to be what number you're kind of wanting to shoot for loosely. Keep that in mind. If you're at turn 100 and you're still not doing significant amounts of damage to the heads, if you're doing like 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, something may have messed up, something may have gone awry, and you may need to recheck how your champions are actually built. Maybe even be higher than this number. My Brogni's definitely not built amazing. I need to get all of his stuff at the bottom, the attack percentage built up, the pieces on the top, actually these pieces at the bottom, the accessories actually taken up as well, because all this extra attack is extra damage that he's going to do. Very, very important. So make sure his attack is very good. Make sure his speed is good. I have 70% crit rate on mine because I have Anchorite, who gives crit rate and crit damage boost. But if you don't have that, build 100% crit rate because crit is very important. And then I have good, okay crit damage actually. It's not good ahead of myself. I have okay crit damage at best. I don't care about resistance and I don't care about accuracy on him. Push that all into attack stats. Full offense, 100% attack. And then for blessings, I have Hero Sword now. I don't know if it's the best one, but it's extra damage per enemy. So I was like, hey, let's go ahead and try it. But right now, honestly, I need more blessings. I need more power. And I have Helm Smasher. So Helm Smasher is going to allow me to ignore a little bit more defense, get a little bit harder hits, at least the chance at it, to make those shields even a little bit bigger. I mean, you'll see that if all the heads are decapitated and Brogni gets his A2 ability off, he's doing a lot of damage. Like, maybe if he can do it here, I don't know if he will or not, obviously. But there we go. Boom. We did 262,000 over there, 352,000 over there. That's some big boosts to Cadaver's shield. I mean, that's 2 shield growths because we have a shield set plus this shield buff. But either way, make sure your Brogni can smack and smack very, very hard. Don't go with reflex stuff. If you have refresh accessories, that's different. Do that. That's amazing. But as far as reflex gear, it's going to lower your damage too much. Unless you have like crazy, insane next level refresh gear or reflex gear, it's not going to be worth it. Next up, we had the bolster sets mentioned. Very, very important. So bolster, I did not do it. It is not shield set, not the same thing, cannot be extended. No good for the team. Next up, I want to talk about what heads to prioritize, and then we'll talk about the actual specific gearing of my team. So as far as the heads to prioritize, this is what I do. So we're going to go ahead and expand my notepad a little bit. I know, high-level note taking here, so we're going to the very bottom. Here we go. So the Head of Mischief. This head, super, super annoying. Come in here. I'll show you guys which head's which because sometimes you may forget. I usually don't pay attention that much to them if I wasn't worried about making content. But here we go. The Head of Mischief. This head right here is the head that will ruin your run. This head will come back when you're at 800 million damage and just steal all the buffs from Corpulent Cadaver and make you have to reset because you don't like your run ending early. So Head of Mischief, make sure that is your number 1 priority. In order to hit that head, you have to have Hex on the head. If you don't have Hex, well, you can't hit the head. So make sure you have those Hex, those curse sets. That's going to allow you to actually hit the Head of Mischief. So the Head of Mischief is the number 1 priority, in my opinion, to make sure is killed consistently. The next up is going to be the Head of Blight. The reason why I don't like the Head of Blight is because if it places the Poison Cloud on everybody, it's going to slow your run up quite a bit. Brogni's not going to be able to do the A2. It's going to be all weak hits. Lydia is not going to be able to place or decrease defense or weaken, and nobody's going to be able to do really anything, but Corpulent Cadaver can still damage through Poison Cloud like it wasn't even there. So that doesn't matter, but for everybody else, especially if it's early on, it can make your run feel like sluggish, definitely. So the Head of Blight is a usually pretty big priority target for me, but then after the Head of Blight, I like to target the Head of Decay. The Head of Decay is kind of similar in the sense that it's going to make your run just slow down. It's not the end of the world because you shouldn't have really any buffs being stolen, which is usually the big problem with Head of Decay. But here, the Head of Decay can cleanse, getting rid of the decreased defense and weaken, making Brogni be even slower. But with this team, I have Sandlashed Survivor. So Sandlashed Survivor can keep that head provoked. Being provoked consistently makes the Head of Decay really not much of a threat whatsoever. So if you can, bring a provoked champion. Krisk is a provoked champion, but we're not using him today. Head of Decay, definitely pretty high on my priority list. Next up is actually going to be Head of Suffering. So the Head of Suffering does some pretty annoying stuff. One of those being takes 2 turns. So it's going to run your Mark of the Hydra counter down a little bit quicker, taking those extra turns. That's not good. But not only that, the Head of Suffering also reduces the damage from AoE attacks by 30%, meaning Brogni is scaling his shields basically 30% slower. So whenever you can, kill this head. However, there's a small issue with that. The Head of Suffering has a ton of HP. If you're early in the fight, it's going to take you so long to actually kill the Head of Suffering that sometimes I'll prioritize hitting the other heads and downing those, get those decapitated, before I'll actually down the Head of Suffering. That's just my approach to it, because some of the heads still take more priority, but it's something you can kind of discern for yourself once you start running this quite a bit. But you'll notice in my run, sometimes I target other heads, even if they're lower on the priority list. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about the Head of Torment. So the Head of Torment is very annoying, especially if you don't have somebody to deal with the actual fears. In this case, Duedan, on his A1 ability, has an ability that does kind of deal with the fears. So attacks one enemy, 50% chance of removing 1 random debuff from all allies, books up to a 60% chance of removing 1 random debuff from all allies. This is fantastic, especially considering most champions will still have block debuffs from Brogni, so the only debuff is probably going to be, well, the fear. So he's going to be cleansing the fear, kind of, so the Head of Torment isn't a massive issue, but if you don't have a champion like Duedan, or even like Anchorite, who also has a cleanse, his ability right here removes 1 random debuff from all allies. So a little soft cleanse with the increased buff duration, he's going to cleanse stuff. Duedan's going to cleanse stuff. So the Head of Torment in this team isn't that big of a deal. But if you're running a team with, say, Krisk and Lanicus, well, you have no cleansers now. So now you are going to need to target the Head of Torment, because if you miss a few buff extensions, well, now all of a sudden Corpulent Cadaver is dropping the artifact shield, can't be reapplied, and things just start spiraling out of control. You have to reset the run, and yeah, you're stuck at your computer for the next 4 hours right before Hydra reset. Don't do that, okay? So make sure you either have a cleanser or that you're playing very mindful of, hey, we need to kill the Head of Torment as soon as possible. And the next up is Head of Wrath. Head of Wrath isn't really that big of a threat to me. The biggest thing to worry about that is big hard hits. And if you have a big shield, which you should, that's not really that big of a deal. So the Head of Wrath is typically one that I don't really prioritize that much. The early match is like the most important part, and making sure that Brogni reapplies his shield if you have champions who run out of their shield is very important. But later in the fight, the Head of Wrath poses no real threat. The heads at like the 20-30 minute mark that pose the most threat is the Head of Suffering, because it's going to take those double turns, could swallow and digest a champion, as well as the Head of Mischief. The Head of Mischief is the most annoying by far. You'll literally see me later in the match, like the second the Head of Mischief pops up, I am stopping the run, going manual, hoping that somebody applies a hex over here so that I can actually target that. You'll see right here, I'm literally clicking that head. It is priority, waiting for it to come back. The second it comes back, boom, Corpulent Cadaver goes in, drops that head. So there we go. That's my priorities. That's my breakdown. Let's jump in here and talk about the actual builds of this champion's 4.4 million damage dealt there. It is satisfying to see those numbers. So all that stuff before this is very important. Keep all that stuff in mind. That's the number one most important part when building this team. But as far as the actual team build goes, I'm looking for very fast champions, basically all across the board. My Lydia is currently built at 278, but in Hydra specifically, 290. So she's fast. She doesn't need to be that fast, but she's pretty fast. You can also scale this down for normal, but this is on hard mode. So 290, we have good accuracy. I don't really care about a whole lot else. For this sake, it's just, hey, get Hex on her, get Cursed on her. You can do it with just Anchorite or just one AoE curse set champion, but ideally, if you can get 2, go ahead and get 2. It's going to only make things better. So we have Lydia going fast, placing Hex whenever possible, fully booked, and Mastery is right here. I'll show you guys the Mastery stuff from here without opening up the big screen. It's not really that important. Anchorite, he's also very fast. Okay, also Lydia, in case you don't know, bringing the decreased defense and weaken. She also places block debuffs, which is nice to have for like the Head of Wrath, stopping that increased attack. Next up, Anchorite. Anchorite brings an AoE A1 ability. Incredible to have revenge accessories on him, or even retaliation gear if you can. His A2 ability cleanses plus increases the duration of all ally buffs. We have 3 buff extender champions, and then his A3 is a full heal and places increased crit rate and increased crit damage on all allies. This is important for Brogni as well as helpful for the entire team. More crits, more damage, more better run, right? And then his masteries, we have War Master. War Master's not needed, but that is what I have. I do have Cycle of Revenge on him, The turn meter boosting mastery, that's fine on him. He can have that. But champions like Cadaver, you do not want that. I'll show you guys the presets after this. Brogni, I already talked about him a little bit. Pushes damage, make him hit hard, make him pretty fast, and you're going to have a pretty successful Brogni. He is 225 in Hydra, and as far as his skills, everything's fully booked. His masteries, I already went over that. Sandlashed Survivor. This doesn't have to be Sandlashed. It can be other champions. Throw him in a provoke set maybe. Provoke set is a very valuable set to have. Consistent provokes, but if you have Sandlashed, she brings some pretty cool stuff. She brings a provoke on the A1. She brings a increased buff duration on the A2, but also decrease the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn. So like a soft strip basically. And then her passive kind of like protects a champion if they're about to die. So like if you're not really paying attention, the Head of Wrath smacks, well, she's going to kind of save you just for a little bit longer, which is always nice to have. And then I had a fairly high awakening, so I put Cruelty on her. Cruelty is going to help us scale the damage a little bit quicker. So it's nice to have on the team if you can get Cruelty, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement. So Sandlashed, this is her mastery setup. I don't know why it's this because I built it a long time ago. It is what it is, honestly. So there's her setup. Shield set, you have to have it in the team. And then Duedan the Runic. Duedan is currently in Reflex set. So I've been talking about high praises basically with Duedan the whole time. I am going to say his one drawback, and that is the fact that this is a 4-turn cooldown. So you'll see that he's a Reflex set, which is very important, not required. He may have to be a little bit faster, but the Reflex set allows him to do his A2 more consistently, do his A3 more often, placing the taunt, strengthen, and the counterattack. The A2 is the most important part though. If nothing else mattered, the A2 is required to be up consistently. You do not want Relentless. You do not want anything like that. No extra turns, none of that nonsense. You want Reflex because you want him to keep up all of his buffs. You want him to keep up his buffs and you want him to extend his buffs whenever possible. So with him, you'll see that he's fast. He's built to be speedy. He's built to take a lot of turns, and he's built to survive, of course. But as far as accuracy, not needed. Resistance, 450 plus. He is the mischief tank. He places the counterattack. Nobody else on the team places counterattack. Nobody else on the team places taunt. So he's going to have 2 extra buffs compared to everybody else on the team. So he should be the mischief target most of the time. Not always, because eventually, I guess we have 10 buffs on Corpulent Cadaver anyways, or if Duedan gets eaten, it takes a while to get his buffs back up. So eventually, he's probably not going to be the mischief tank consistently, but hopefully by that point, you're one-shotting all the heads anyways. As far as his masteries, we have resistance stuff. Make sure you're resisting the head of mischief. It has the most accuracy. You have to resist it. If you don't, you're going to be in for a bad time. Trust me on that one. So Duedan is currently in Reflex. There you go. That's his build. And then Corpulent Cadaver. He is in Retaliation, and he's in Revenge. And then as far as his abilities, let's talk about his presets. Very, very important as well. As far as the presets go, Corpulent Cadaver, turn off this A2 and A3 ability. They're disgusting, okay? Do not do it. Do not use the A2. Do not use the A3. The A1 is all that matters. Weak hits, no crits, Poison Cloud, everything's irrelevant. He does damage based on 30% of the value of the shield all the time. Nothing's going to stop him. He is a wrecking ball, okay? So Corpulent, only use the A1 ability. Duedan, I prioritize the number 2. I open with the A3 so that Head of Mischief starts attacking him from the very first turn and then have that set number 2 priority. Anchorite, we open with the A3 and I don't use it. You can use this all the time if you like. It doesn't really matter if you don't have Emic. I built this around Emic, but if you want to use this all the time, just go ahead and turn it off. It's perfectly fine. You can just have it using whenever you're not using the A1. But for me, since I have him in Curse set, I want him to use AoE abilities as often as possible. The A3 doesn't attack. It is used sometimes to save me if my champions are getting really low, but in general, you want him using his A2 as often as possible, and then, well, his A2 as often as possible, but then the A1, any other chance. This A1 is incredible for placing Hex, and also just getting extra War Master hits out there if you have him with War Master. And then Lydia, she is a priority on her A2, and then number 2 priority on her A3. Both of these skills are very good. If you manual it a little bit, you can use his A3 to block the Head of Wrath from getting increased attack. You can block some heads. It's a nice to have thing. It's not required, but I do turn it on because it's better than the A1 ability for sure. The A1's not that useful. A3, definitely turn it on. Sandlashed Survivor opens with the A1. I did manually target the head with Sandlashed Survivor. And honestly, if you start off the run, just do it a few times. Make sure that Sandlashed Survivor actually places the provoke, because there's no reason to start yourself off in the worst, well, not the best, basically. So if you don't place the provoke on turn 1, just reset the run. It's super easy to do, super simple, just free regroup. But for me, I just manualed it. I hope, yeah, I did. I clicked the Head of Decay, went over there, provoke landed, perfect. We continue the run. No problem whatsoever. So make sure you get the provoke up the first turn, and the A2, everything else should be pretty smooth from there. And then Brogni, he opens with the A3 and then prioritizes the A2. Now for me, I manual the run, so I keep the A3 turned off. But if you're somebody who doesn't want to manual it, you want to full auto it, turn the A3 on. Have him using the A3 whenever he wants. It's going to make sure that if anybody's shield drops off, it's going to come right back. It's going to take away his A1 ability sometimes because he's going to use the A3 instead. And this hits pretty hard. So you will be missing out on some damage, but you will have a possibly a little bit more consistent, a little bit safer run. But for me, I'm here watching it anyway, so if somebody's shield drops off, I can just reapply it manually. So guys, there you go. That is a 30-minute video breakdown. Pretty much, I'd say hopefully as far in depth with Corpulent Cadaver teams, this specifically on how they work, to where you can go out and build your own. You can see, okay, we have 3 buff extenders. If you drop one of them, throw in Emic. He works out great. A little more difficult, but I think a little bit higher damage potential. Champions like Lanicus work great as well. But if you have multiple 4-turn cooldown buff extenders, well, it's going to be a little more difficult. Reflex set is very important on those champions. But guys, this is going to be the team. I'm not going to leave this run down below because, to be honest, does anybody want to sit and watch this 30 gigabyte video? Yeah, it's 30 gigabytes on my computer. It's way too long. Way too big, that is. It's an hour-long video. Nobody wants to watch an hour-long run of Hydra, do they? I don't think so. Maybe you want to watch the end of it. I'll show you guys a couple minutes at the end. But, I mean, actually, you know what? If you've been here for 30 minutes, I'll just sit here and chill with you guys for just a few minutes. Also, if you haven't liked the video already, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. And while we watch this a little bit, I will give some ideas on Corpulent Cadaver in general, kind of the thoughts on Hydra as far as the Hydra clash goes. I don't think Corpulent Cadaver is fun. I don't think this team is enjoyable. I don't look forward to running this team. Actually, I really don't look forward to running this team because this team requires more resets than I like to do in literally anything. This team took me so many resets because originally I was trying to do it with Emic, and the Emic team kept dropping buffs. It was awful. So I was having to reset this run after, say, 20 or 30 minutes invested, having to reset, go over, try it again, try it again, try it again. This version, I think I had to reset like twice, so it wasn't very time intensive, but very easily. You can see here, Corpulent Cadaver has the mark of Hydra. That's all RNG past the first turn. So the first turn is going to go on Brogni because you built him for damage. So that first turn is going on Brogni, but then after that, it's going on whoever it wants. It's a complete RNG. It could be 2 turns, and then Corpulent Cadaver gets it. That's terrible. You have to reset. Well, it could be 3 turns, and it could possibly be terrible. You possibly may have to reset, or you may just try to continue. But honestly, I don't like to see it on Corpulent Cadaver until like 4 or 5 turns down the road. 4 or 5 champions have already been marked. Then Corpulent Cadaver can take it, and it's not going to be that big of a deal because he should be one-shotting the heads. They should get turns very infrequently, and it all should be fine. So as far as Corpulent Cadaver teams being fun to run, they're really not. So the next thing would be being balanced. Obviously, they're not balanced either. But as far as fixing Corpulent Cadaver teams, if you change Corpulent Cadaver, or even if you change the teams, you're just going to get the next OP thing, OP cheese strategy pop up. Basically, what you're going to have after that is you're going to have champions like Trunda, who, if you kill all the heads, decapitate all the heads, she comes in with her A2 ability, does nutso crazy insane damage on everything because it is actually bugged from my understanding, and that's going to be the next team. That's going to be the next team doing billions of damage. So fixing Corpulent Cadaver so he can't do this isn't going to fix the entire problem of the Hydra clash. Obviously, you have things like Acrisia's doing tons of damage compared to the next best thing. And I think in general, the Hydra clash needs to be revamped as far as how points and how stuff like that is earned. It also definitely needs to have rewards for 4th and 5th place because that's super discouraging. Like my clan right now, we are maybe going to take 4th or 5th place. Last week we did, because last week we were like, hey, the other 3 or 4 clans in our group are going to do more damage than what we usually do. If we push up, we're just going to risk being in harder matches next time. So there's no reason to even push. So we're just going to chill in 4th or 5th place, because if we do risk it, then we know, hey, we're definitely not going to get any rewards next week. And we could, put in tons of points and still not get any rewards. So we're just like, hey, pushing our points way down low. And maybe we get matched up with a low-level clan, which is not going to be good for them. That's going to be terrible for them. So basically, it allows for required, gamification strategy is what we'll call it, of the actual Hydra clash. Because I believe the matchmaking is based on your previous 4 possibly. But either way, you've got to play around that. And I think it does need to be changed. You should have rewards for 4th and 5th place. I wouldn't care as much to push to go ahead and try to get in 1st and 3rd. You'll have the clans that, should be matched with each other, and the clans that shouldn't be, we won't be matched against people who are pretty new and are maxing out at, say, 11 million points, when we're probably not going to get a ton more than this, because we're going to keep our points pretty low. So the Hydra Clash matchmaking, it's not been out long enough to really know how it works exactly, but in general, I do think 4th and 5th place needs something. It's gonna encourage people to just start quitting their clans, leaving their clans, because now we're getting kicked out, because now you have Hydra Clash requirements, you have CVC requirements, and all that kind of stuff. So we have the Hydra Clash matchmaking, we have the frustration of Corpulent Cadaver teams being ran, and the next thing is obviously the insanity of their damage. I think as far as a better way to do the points in Hydra was something I've seen, I think, mentioned by Victor Tez. He was saying, I believe, I don't know exactly, but say you had 5 clans, okay? Each clan has 30 people. So you have 150 total people. Well, say you had 150 total people possible in these matches. Number one person, okay? Say I did 40 billion damage with my Cadaver team. Well, I get 1 point. Or say I get 150 points, for example. I get 150 points because I'm the number 1 person in the bracket. Well, somebody else does 39 billion damage with their Cadaver team. Well, they get 149 points. So now the points aren't inflating massively because of a few top members. Instead, you're having your whole clan needing to push up higher numbers in Hydra so they can place overall in the Hydra bracket maybe top 10. So now your clan's getting 150, 149, 148, 147 points. That's just like a loose idea, but basically you're getting points based on how you've done compared to everybody else in Hydra. Not so much based on, hey, I'm going to spend 5 hours. It may still be 5 hours doing Cadaver teams, but in that case, it's not going to be unrecoverable. There's clans who players do, let's see here. This guy has 21 billion damage, right? 21 billion points. That's as much as my clan does sometimes. Not really. It's a little bit less than my clan does. But that guy right here is alone carrying the clan. However, if you switch this, now instead of his points being 23 billion points just from him, it's going to be, okay, he has 150 points. So he's still getting the most. He's still getting the biggest contribution, but he gets 150 points versus 23 billion and just solidifies the entire victory just from himself. It still allows Corpulent Cadaver teams to be ran. It still motivates you to push your teams even higher, but you don't have to worry about one person carrying the entire bracket. Now, I just say that for an example. It could be 150 times 3, right? 150 times 3 would be what? 450? So 450, it could be 450 points total because you have a total of, I guess, 450 keys that could be used across the entire Hydra bracket. So maybe number 1 person gets 450 points. Something other than strictly point-based, I think, could be better. I don't know if that's the best system, but it's a possible system. This would mean Acrizia stays fine, Corpulent Cadaver stays fine. It still gives players reasons to build those teams, but now you don't have to build those teams, and you don't have to spend hours if you don't want to. You know, maybe you want to get 60 points. Well, 60 points is better than nothing, even if you're 60 points. I mean, hey, you're still contributing to the clan. It would give clan members more reason to just push some stuff in Hydra. I don't know. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. I do think, though, that Cadaver teams should be changed in some way, that some stuff needs to change in Hydra. I think this way, going about points is the best thing that I've seen. I've seen people talk about capping Cadaver's damage, and I don't think that solves the problem. I don't think capping his damage necessarily solves the problem because you're still going to have other teams that are doing ridiculously high numbers of damage that you just can't do unless you have those specific champions, which is the biggest complaint about Cadaver teams. You can't do it unless you have Brogni, which is like the number 1 most required champion for the team. So other teams, if you have a like the number one, it's a gacha game, right? It's a hero collector game. You're gonna need certain champions to progress your account to certain areas of the game and to push certain difficulties. So I don't know. Is Cadaver, should it be like this? I don't think so. It's not necessarily fun, but should there be a way of Hydra being organized so that this can still be fine to use? I think so. I think other things could be changed. I don't think nerfing the champion is the best idea because he's used in things like Clan Boss as well. But guys, ultimately, I'm just a guy talking on the internet. What does that matter, huh? I showed you guys my team. I showed you guys the team with no Krisk. So I gave you that whole entire breakdown there. This team works. If you want to build it, go for it. If you value your team more than your sanity, it's going to be even a better idea. But let me know your thoughts down below. I'm definitely interested in hearing them. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Like I said, I'm just a talking head on the internet. So what I'm saying is not the right way. It's just the way I'm thinking. That can be changed, okay? So just leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. And if you want to, sign up for a takeover, click the takeover link down below. Let me build your Cadaver team for you. Endure that, little sacrifice of sanity. And you don't have to. You don't have to do that when you build a team. But either way, guys, thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me for that last 16 minutes or whatever. 6 minutes. I don't know. Well, I guess it was 6 minutes of kind of a rant, rambling on. But maybe you can see the team a little bit here. Hopefully it's better than actually watching the team do its stuff in the background. It's kind of boring. I mean, it's just cycling through stuff. Cadaver smacks the head. Boom, the head's gone. Watch this. Like, here you go. The Head of Suffering, okay? Head of Suffering, turn 1053. Cadaver, go up there and just blast him. 3.8 million damage. Kills him. There's a few other ways to optimize your damage. Like, hey, make sure you target heads that don't have hex on them if everybody else has hex, because the head with no hex, is still damage is going to be shared to the other heads. But ultimately, just get big numbers, right? Either way, thank y'all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.